Have you ever looked at a bowl of sugar sitting on your kitchen counter and wondered, why doesn't this just spontaneously burst into energy right now? Seriously, think about it. That sugar is absolutely packed with energy. It's got enough structural fuel to power your entire body, yet it just sits there, completely stable. What exactly is holding it back from just releasing all that energy at once?
Well, by the end of this explainer, you're going to understand the exact hidden forces keeping that sugar stable. We're going to unpack the core concept of biological energy, the mathematical formula behind what we call free energy, and exactly how your cells safely harness this literal explosive power to keep you alive. Okay, let's dive right in. To solve our sugar mystery, we first need to get on the same page about what we're actually talking about. In the biological sciences, we define energy in the simplest terms possible. It's just the ability to do work or enact a change. Now, it comes in a lot of forms, right? Light, heat, electricity. But to really grasp how a living cell operates, we need to divide all of these into two major fundamental categories. In this classic example brilliantly illustrates our first major concept, potential versus kinetic energy. Picture a massive wrecking ball suspended completely motionless, say 2 stories up in the air by a crane. It isn't moving, but it has 100% potential energy simply because of where it's positioned. Now, if the crane drops it, that potential energy instantly transforms into kinetic energy, which is the energy of objects in motion. As it falls, it builds speed and is capable of doing immense work, like completely smashing a building.
But here is what's really interesting. Potential energy isn't just about an object being held up high, it's also about structure. Sure, water held behind a massive dam has potential energy due to its location, but what about a compressed spring sitting flat on the floor, or a tautly pulled rubber band? They possess potential energy based entirely on their physical structure. They are literally just waiting for a chance to snap back and release that energy. So let's zoom way in to the microscopic level and see how this builds our understanding of biology. The food you eat, like that bowl of sugar we talked about, is essentially just a microscopic compressed spring. The chemical bonds holding the atoms of that sugar molecule together are structural potential energy. In biology, we call this chemical energy. When your body breaks those specific bonds, energy is released, exactly like letting go of a tightly stretched rubber band. Which brings up a really crucial question. If our food contains all this potential energy, how do we actually measure the amount of energy that's available for our cells to use? Because as we know from basic physics, no energy transfer is perfect. You are always going to lose a little bit of energy in the process. Enter a brilliant scientist named Josiah Willard Gibbs. He developed a measurement we now call Gibbs free energy, which we abbreviate with the letter G. You see, when a chemical reaction happens, some energy is inevitably lost as unusable heat. We call that lost energy entropy. Gibbs free energy is simply the usable energy that is left over. Think of it as the biological budget you actually have available in your account to do cellular work. Let's look at the actual formula behind this. And hey, don't worry, we're going to take it step by step. Delta G represents the change in free energy. To find it, we take delta H, which is the total energy change in the entire system, basically the total potential we had to begin with. Then we subtract T times delta S. That part represents the energy lost to entropy scaled by the temperature. So total energy minus your lost energy equals your usable free energy. It's that simple. Now, based on this formula, literally all chemical reactions in the universe fall into one of two buckets. If a reaction releases energy, we call it an exergonic reaction. An easy way to remember this, think exergonic means energy is exiting. It has a negative delta G because the system lost energy overall. But if a reaction requires an input of energy to happen in the first place, it has a positive delta G. We call this an endergonic reaction. Let's connect this directly to your own body's metabolism. When your cells build complex molecules from simpler ones, which is an anabolic process, like storing sugar for later, that actually requires an input of energy, so it's endergonic. But when your body breaks that sugar down to fuel a heavy workout, a catabolic process, it releases energy. It is exergonic. Now, we really need to address a super common confusion here that trips a lot of people up. In thermodynamics, we refer to energy-releasing exergonic reactions as spontaneous because they don't require an active input of energy to proceed. But wait, does the word spontaneous mean instant? The answer is absolutely not. Spontaneous does not mean instantaneous. Let's look at a piece of iron rusting. Rusting is a spontaneous exergonic reaction. It gives off energy and happens entirely on its own without you needing to plug it in or power it. But it takes years to happen little by little. So spontaneous just means it happens without added energy. It definitely doesn't mean it happens fast.
All right, time for a quick mini quiz to see if we're putting this all together. Think of a baby chick developing inside a fertilized egg. Is the growth of that highly complex living organism an exergonic or endergonic process? Take just a second to think about the flow of energy there. If you guessed endergonic, you hit the nail right on the head. Building a highly complex, beautifully organized biological structure from a bunch of simpler nutrients requires a massive input of energy. The developing chick absorbs energy to grow, making it a fundamentally endergonic process. Now, if our cells were just a closed loop, eventually all these reactions would balance out to what we call chemical equilibrium, which is the lowest possible free energy state. But wait, this is an absolutely crucial point. A living cell at equilibrium is a dead cell. Living things are open systems. We are in a constant uphill battle against equilibrium and entropy, constantly importing new nutrients and energy, which ultimately comes from the sun, just to stay alive. Which brings us right back to our original kitchen counter mystery. We established earlier that breaking down sugar is an exergonic, spontaneous reaction that releases a ton of energy. So why is that sugar bowl perfectly safe? Why doesn't all that structural potential energy just release right this second? The secret here is a concept called activation energy. Even exergonic reactions that have a net release of energy still require a tiny initial push to get started. Think of it like a giant boulder sitting in a slight dip at the very top of a massive hill. It naturally wants to roll down and release all its kinetic energy, but it needs a small push over the edge first. Here's what that push actually looks like at the molecular level. To break the stable bonds of our sugar molecule, the chemical structure must be physically contorted into a highly unstable, high-energy phase we call the transition state. It takes a very specific initial energy input to bend and twist the molecule into this vulnerable shape before the bonds can finally snap and release their stored energy. In the non-living world, this required initial push, this activation energy, usually comes from heat. Heat speeds up molecules, making them bounce around frantically and smash into each other with intense physical force. This smashing contorts the bonds enough to reach that critical transition state. It's exactly why you need a spark of heat to make a pool of fuel burn. But hold on, this is incredibly important. You might be asking yourself right now, well, why can't our bodies just use heat to push these reactions forward? Well, if we raised our internal cellular temperatures high enough to provide the heat energy required to overcome these activation barriers, our proteins, our DNA, our very cells would literally cook and disintegrate. So life has a brilliant, real game changer of a workaround. If we can't safely raise the heat to overcome the massive activation energy barrier, biology simply lowers the barrier instead. This process is called catalysis. By using special cellular tools to significantly lower the required activation energy, vital, life-saving reactions can happen rapidly and efficiently at the completely safe, cool temperatures inside our bodies. Let's wrap up these big concepts we've unpacked today. And by the way, this is a perfect moment to pause and screenshot these definitions for your notes. We've gone from kinetic and potential energy to understanding Gibbs free energy as our usable biological budget. And finally, we learned that activation energy is the crucial hidden barrier that prevents our bowl of sugar from spontaneously breaking down on the counter. But wait, that leaves us with one final massive question. If our delicate cells absolutely cannot use extreme heat to drive these life-sustaining reactions, what exactly are the special biological tools they use to perform this magic trick of catalysis? How do they actually lower that barrier? Well, we are going to explore